The rejected Luna who became untouchable. They say when an alpha king severs the bond, the omega dies within 3 days. Lena Vale had 48 hours left, and she refused to spend them begging. While the palace celebrated Kael Draven's new chosen queen, Lena stood in the kitchen where she'd scrubbed floors for 5 years, feeling her soul crack like ice under pressure. The bond didn't fade gently. It tore, a violent ripping that left her gasping against the stone counter, blood on her tongue. She could crawl upstairs, throw herself at his feet, plead for mercy, or she could walk into the wildlands where even trained warriors didn't return, and prove she was stronger than anyone believed. If you want to see how a discarded servant becomes the most feared force in the kingdom, stay until the end, and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. The first sign was the silence. Lena had been carrying a tray of wine glasses up the servant's staircase when the noise in her head, the constant low hum that had lived behind her thoughts for 5 years, simply stopped. Not faded, not quieted. Stopped. Like someone had cut a string she didn't know was holding her upright. The tray hit the stones. Crystal exploded. She didn't hear it. She pressed both palms against the cold wall, gasping, trying to understand what was wrong. Her chest felt hollow. Her lungs wouldn't fill properly. And there was a sensation she couldn't name, something fundamental being torn out by the roots, leaving a wound that bled inward. Above her, in the great hall, music swelled. Laughter. The kind of celebration that marked important royal moments. Lena's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the step, surrounded by broken glass and spreading wine that looked too much like blood in the torchlight. Her hands were shaking. No, her whole body was shaking, muscles spasming like she was freezing to death in the middle of summer. Get up. Her own voice sounded strange, distant. Get up, you stupid girl. They'll beat you for breaking. Then it hit. Not the realization. The pain. It felt like someone had reached into her chest and grabbed her heart with a fist made of ice and thorns. She doubled over, forehead hitting her knees, a sound escaping her throat that was barely human. The bond? The mate bond she'd never asked for, never wanted, that had tied her to Kael Draven since the moment she'd turned 18 in his palace, was being severed. Not naturally, not gently. He was cutting her loose. Footsteps on the stairs above. Lena forced herself upright, pressing her back against the wall, trying to control her breathing. Every inhale felt like swallowing glass. There you are. Mira, the head housemaid, stood on the landing with her arms crossed. She was a hard woman, 40 years in service, with eyes that missed nothing. You're needed in the hall. His Majesty is making an announcement, and we're short on... She stopped, stared. What's wrong with you? Nothing. Lena pushed herself to her feet. Her vision swam. I dropped the tray. I'll clean. You look like death. Mira came down 3 steps, frowning. Then her expression shifted. Understanding. And something that might have been pity if Mira were capable of it. Oh, he actually did it. Lena said nothing. Couldn't. Word in the kitchens was just gossip, Mira continued, almost talking to herself. I didn't think even he would be that cold. Not after 5 years, not after... She trailed off, shook her head. Doesn't matter. You still have to come. Royal protocol. All bonded servants present for major announcements. I'm not bonded anymore. The words tasted like poison. You are until the severance completes? That takes 3 days. You know the law. Mira's voice wasn't unkind, but it wasn't gentle either. Come on. Better you see it yourself than hear it from the others. Lena wanted to refuse, wanted to turn and run down the stairs, out the servant's door, into the night. But 5 years of obedience, of keeping her head down, of being invisible, pulled her forward. She stepped over the broken crystal and followed Mira up toward the light and music. The great hall was blazing. Every torch lit, every candle burning, 500 nobles in their finest silks and furs. Lena and Mira entered through the servants' entrance and pressed themselves against the back wall, just shadows in the crowd. No one looked at them. No one ever did. At the front of the hall, on the raised dais where the throne sat, Kael Draven stood like a king from the old stories. 6'4", broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes the color of winter storms. He wore black and silver, the colors of House Draven, and the crown of the northern reach sat on his head like it had been forged for him specifically, which it had been. 3 years ago, when he'd killed the previous king in single combat and taken the throne by right of strength. Lena had scrubbed blood off that throne, had cleaned the hall after that fight, had avoided looking at Kyle Draven for 3 straight years even as the bond hummed between them, pulling at her like a hook in her ribs. He'd never acknowledged it, never spoken to her directly. She was a servant. He was a king. The bond meant nothing against that divide, except now it was gone, and looking at him hurt worse than anything she'd ever felt. "My lords and ladies," Kyle's voice carried across the hall without him raising it. Command came naturally to him. "You've been patient tonight, and I thank you for it. I've called you here to witness a declaration that will shape the future of this kingdom." The crowd shifted. Anticipation rippled through the nobles like wind through grass. Kyle gestured to his left, where a woman stepped forward into the light. Lena's heart stopped. She was beautiful. Not in a soft way, in the way that wolves were beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, pale blonde hair pulled back in an intricate braid, wearing a dress of deep blue that probably cost more than Lena would earn in a lifetime. She moved like someone who'd been trained to command attention, and when she smiled, the nobles murmured approval. "This is Lady Seraphine Corva," Kael announced, "daughter of Duke Corva, House of the Eastern Shield. She has proven herself a worthy ally, a skilled strategist, and—" He paused, and Lena saw something flicker across his face, too fast to name, "a fitting queen for this realm." The hall erupted. Applause, cheers, nobles shouting congratulations. Several high lords stepped forward to bow to Seraphine, who accepted their homage with practiced grace. Mira's hand closed on Lena's elbow. "Don't faint. Don't you dare." Lena wasn't going to faint. She was going to be sick. Her stomach twisted and the pain in her chest doubled, tripled. The bond was screaming its death throes, and she had to watch him smile at another woman, had to watch him take Seraphine's hand and raise it to his lips while the kingdom celebrated. "He's doing it for the Alliance," someone behind Lena whispered. Another servant, probably. Corva controls the eastern border. Without their support, the kingdom's vulnerable to what? "Doesn't matter why," another voice muttered. "That poor Omega he's been keeping never had a chance." Lena closed her eyes, tried to breathe, tried to think through the pain. She'd known this would happen eventually. Of course she had. Kings didn't marry servants. Bonds or no bonds, the world didn't work that way. She'd told herself for 5 years that she was invisible to him, that the bond was just bad luck, that she'd serve her time and leave and forget him. But some stupid, foolish part of her had hoped. On the dais, Kael was speaking again. "The wedding will take place in 1 month's time. Until then—" Lena didn't hear the rest. The pain crested, a wave of agony that knocked the breath out of her, and suddenly she was stumbling backward, Mira's grip the only thing keeping her upright. "Get her out of here," someone hissed. Hands guided her through the servant's door, down a corridor, into a small room that smelled like soap and lye. Someone shoved her onto a stool. A cup of water appeared in her shaking hands. "Drink," Mira ordered. Lena drank. It didn't help. "You've got maybe 2 days before the bond death sets in," Mira said flatly. "I've seen it before. Omega gets rejected by an alpha, the bond kills them from the inside. Slow, ugly. You'll start coughing blood tomorrow, probably. Day after that, your organs shut down. Day 3, she shrugged. You'll be lucky if you make it to day 3. Encouraging, Lena managed. "I'm not here to encourage you. I'm here to tell you the truth." Mira crouched down so they were eye level. "You've got one option. Go upstairs. Beg him to keep the bond. Throw yourself at his feet. Cry. Make him feel guilty. Whatever it takes. Kings have kept mistresses before. You won't be queen, but you'll live." The thought made Lena want to vomit. "Or," Mira continued, "you accept it. Die quiet. We'll bury you in the servants' cemetery, and in a month no one will remember your name. Those are my options." Lena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Beg or die. That's life, girl. You're an Omega. He's a king. That's all there is." Lena set down the cup. Her hands had stopped shaking. The pain was still there, a constant burning in her chest, but something else was rising underneath it, something cold and sharp. She thought about the last 5 years. Scrubbing floors, washing clothes, dodging the head cook's temper, and the stablemaster's wandering hands. Being invisible, being nothing. Feeling the bond pull at her every single day, knowing Cale Draven walked the same halls and never once looked at her like she was real. She thought about the wildlands beyond the kingdom walls, the forest that stretched for 100 miles, full of predators and rogue wolves and things that didn't have names. The place where the kingdom sent criminals to die, where even trained soldiers didn't venture without a full battalion. She thought about dying on her knees versus dying on her feet. "There's a third option," Lena said quietly. Mira frowned. "What?" "I leave." "Leave? To go where? You're bonded to the—" "Not for much longer." Lena stood up. The room tilted, but she steadied herself against the wall. "You said 3 days. That means I have 3 days to get far enough away that when I die, I do it somewhere he'll never find the body. That's insane. You'll die in the forest before the bond even finishes killing you." "Maybe." Lena met Mira's eyes. "But at least I'll die making my own choice, not begging for scraps from someone who never wanted me in the first place." She walked past Mira, out of the room, down the corridor toward the servants' quarters. Her legs felt weak, but they carried her. She had a small room, barely more than a closet, that she shared with 2 other maids. They were both upstairs serving at the celebration. Good. She didn't want to explain. Lena owned almost nothing: a spare dress, a cloak, a knife she'd stolen from the kitchens 3 years ago and kept hidden in case the stablemaster ever cornered her properly. She bundled them together, tied the cloak around her shoulders, and slipped the knife into her belt. Her hands were shaking again, but not from pain. From something else. Something that felt almost like relief. She was done. Done being invisible. Done being discarded. Done waiting for a man who'd never seen her as anything but an inconvenience. The servants' entrance was unguarded. It always was during celebrations, when everyone was busy inside. Lena stepped out into the cool night air and looked up at the palace one last time. Light blazed from every window. She could still hear the music, the laughter. They were celebrating up there, celebrating her death, even if they didn't know it yet. "Let them," she whispered. Then she turned her back on the palace and started walking toward the tree line. The wildlands waited, dark, endless, deadly. Lena walked faster. The first night was the hardest. Not because of the cold, though her thin cloak barely kept out the chill. Not because of the darkness, though the forest at night was so black she could barely see her own hands. But because every step she took away from the kingdom, the bond screamed louder. It wanted her to go back. It needed her to go back. The severance wasn't complete yet, and her body didn't understand why she was moving in the wrong direction. Her chest ached like someone was tightening a vice around her ribs. Her head pounded. Twice she had to stop and lean against a tree, gasping, fighting the urge to turn around. But she didn't. She kept walking. By dawn, she'd made it maybe 5 miles. Deep enough that she couldn't see the palace lights anymore. Deep enough that the trees were thicker, older, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out most of the sky. The forest smelled like pine and damp earth, and something else. Something wild and dangerous that made her instincts scream. Lena found a small clearing and collapsed against a fallen log. Her whole body hurt. The bond pain was worse now, sharper, like her soul was being shredded from the inside. She pressed a hand to her chest and felt her heartbeat racing, irregular, struggling. Mira had been right. This was going to kill her. But at least she'd die free. She must have fallen asleep because the next thing she knew, the sun was higher and something was growling. Lena's eyes snapped open. She didn't move, didn't breathe. 3 wolves stood at the edge of the clearing. Not normal wolves. These were bigger, with eyes that held too much intelligence. Shifters. Rogues, probably, kicked out of their packs and living wild in the forest. The largest one, a gray male with scars across his muzzle, took a step forward, his lips pulled back from his teeth. "Well," he said, his voice rough and barely human. "Look what we have here. A lost little Omega." Lena's hand moved slowly toward the knife at her belt. "I'm passing through. I don't want trouble." "You're in trouble, girl." The gray wolf laughed, and the other 2 circled around behind her. "This is our territory. You're trespassing. That means you're ours." "I'll leave." Lena stood up carefully, keeping her back to the log. "Just point me in the right direction and—" Too late for that. The gray wolf shifted, bones cracking, until a man stood there instead. Naked, scarred, with eyes that had lost anything resembling humanity years ago. You smell like palace, like soft living and king's protection. You ran away, didn't you? Let me guess. Rejected bond? Lena said nothing. Thought so. You've got that look? All broken and desperate. He grinned. Don't worry. We'll take good care of you. A pretty Omega like you? You'll be useful. We haven't had a woman in camp for months. The other two wolves shifted too. They were all looking at her like she was prey. Lena's fingers closed around the knife handle. Don't. Don't what? Don't take what's ours. The gray wolf, their leader, clearly, took another step forward. You're dying anyway. Bond severance, right? You've got what, 2 days left? We'll make them fun days. Something inside Lena snapped. She'd spent 5 years being afraid. Being small. Being invisible. She'd run into the forest to die on her own terms, not to be some rogue pack's plaything before the end. I said, she repeated, and her voice came out different, harder, colder, with an edge she didn't recognize. Don't. The leader laughed. Or what? You'll... Lena moved. She didn't think, didn't plan. Her body just moved, faster than she'd known she could, the knife coming up and across in a single fluid motion. The blade caught the leader across the chest, not deep, but enough to draw blood. Enough to make him stumble back, shocked. You little... Next time I'll aim for your throat. Lena held the knife steady, her heart hammering. Leave, now! The three rogues stared at her. Then the leader started laughing again, but it sounded different this time, less certain. You've got fire, he admitted. Shame you're dying. You'd make a decent pack member if you weren't already dead on your feet. I'm not dead yet. Give it time. He shifted back to wolf form, and the other two followed. We'll see you around, Omega. When the bond finishes breaking you, when you're too weak to hold that knife, we'll be waiting. They disappeared into the trees. Lena stood there for a long moment, shaking, the knife still raised. Then her legs gave out and she sat down hard, the adrenaline draining away and leaving her hollow. She'd survived, barely. But she'd survived. The bond pain was worse now, like her body was punishing her for the fight. She could feel herself weakening, her energy draining away. Mira's words echoed in her head. You've got maybe 2 days. Lena looked down at the knife in her hand, at the small streak of blood on the blade. She'd stood her ground. She'd fought back. For the first time in her life, she'd refused to be a victim. It felt good. It felt terrifying. It felt like the beginning of something she didn't understand yet. What? She made it another mile before her body gave out completely. The bond severance hit its peak around midday. Lena was walking along what might have been a game trail when the pain suddenly doubled, tripled, became so intense that she couldn't breathe. She collapsed against a tree, sliding down until she was sitting in the dirt, both hands pressed to her chest like she could hold herself together through sheer will. Blood on her tongue. She was coughing it up now, Mira's prediction coming true. Her vision blurred. Her heartbeat was everywhere and nowhere, scattered and wrong. This was it. This was how she died. Alone in the forest 3 days early, with no one to mark her passing. She'd made her choice. She didn't regret it. But part of her, some small, traitorous part, wished it didn't have to hurt this much. You're blocking the path. Lena's head jerked up. Through her blurred vision, she could make out a figure standing a few feet away, tall, male, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Sorry, she managed. Blood bubbled at the corner of her mouth. I'll move. Just give me a minute. You'll be dead in a minute. The man crouched down, studying her face. He was older than her, maybe 30, with dark hair tied back and eyes the color of amber, scars on his hands and throat. Bond severance, final stage. How long were you bonded? 5 years? He whistled low. That's going to be ugly. Who rejected you? Does it matter? Not really. He tilted his head. You know you're dying, right? I noticed. And you came out here anyway, alone, with nothing but a stolen kitchen knife and a death wish. He almost smiled. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can it be both? That did make him smile. I suppose it can. He stood up. brushed dirt off his pants. Well, Omega with no name, you've got two options. You can stay here and die in the next hour, slow and painful. Or you can let me help you. Lena laughed, and it turned into a cough that brought up more blood. Help me? Why would you? Because you fought off 3 rogue wolves this morning with nothing but a kitchen knife, and that's the most interesting thing I've seen in months. He held out a hand. My name is Oren Vane. I'm an outcast, a healer, and someone who knows things about bonds that most people don't, including how to keep you alive long enough to figure out what you really are. What I really am? Lena stared at his hand. I'm a dying Omega, that's all. If that were true, you'd be dead already. Oren's amber eyes held hers. Normal Omegas don't survive 3 days in the wildlands. They don't fight off rogues, and they definitely don't have the kind of power signature you're putting off right now. I don't have power. I'm nothing. You're something. He kept his hand extended. And if you want to live long enough to find out what, you'll take my hand and trust me. Or you can sit here and prove everyone who ever underestimated you right. Lena looked at his hand, at his scarred, steady fingers. She thought about dying alone, about being nothing, about Kyle Draven celebrating his new queen while her body rotted in the forest. She thought about the way she'd moved when the rogues threatened her, the speed, the certainty, the feeling that something deep inside her had woken up and didn't plan on going back to sleep. If I die anyway, she said slowly, you wasted your time. Then I'll waste it. Oren's smile didn't waver. Call it a character flaw. I've always been too curious for my own good. Lena reached up and took his hand. His grip was strong, pulling her to her feet with surprising ease. The world tilted, and she would have fallen if he hadn't steadied her. How far? She asked. My camp is about 2 miles north. Can you walk? I walked 5 miles from the palace while dying. 2 more won't kill me. That's the spirit. Oren started walking, keeping pace with her stumbling steps. Tell me something, Omega. When you left the palace, did you have a plan, or did you just run? I ran. Good. Plans are overrated. Survival is instinct, not strategy. He glanced at her. What's your name? Lena. Lena Vale. Well, Lena Vale, welcome to the part of your life where everything you thought you knew is wrong. It's going to hurt. It's going to be terrifying. But if you're strong enough, and I think you might be, you'll come out the other side as something this kingdom has never seen before. Lena didn't have the energy to ask what he meant. She just focused on putting one foot in front of the other, following this strange man deeper into the forest, away from everything she'd ever known. Behind her in the palace, Kyle Draven was celebrating his engagement. Ahead of her, in the unknown, something was waiting. And for the first time in 5 years, Lena Vale wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. Oren's camp wasn't what Lena expected. She'd pictured a crude shelter, maybe a lean-to made of branches and moss. Instead, she found herself staring at a small stone cottage built into the side of a hill, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. Smoke curled from a chimney. Herbs hung drying from the eaves. A garden grew in a cleared patch nearby, somehow thriving despite the wild forest pressing in on all sides. You live here? Lena managed, leaning heavily against a tree. The 2-mile walk had taken everything she had left. Her legs were shaking, and the taste of blood was constant now. 10 years and counting. Oren pulled open the wooden door. Get inside before you collapse. I'd rather not carry you. The interior was warm, lit by a fire in a stone hearth. Shelves lined the walls, packed with jars and bottles and things Lena didn't recognize. A bed sat in one corner, covered with furs. A table took up most of the space, its surface stained with what looked like years of work, herbs, tinctures, blood, maybe. Lena made it 3 steps inside before her knees buckled. Oren caught her, barely, and half carried, half dragged her to the bed. When did you last eat? Yesterday, maybe. Time had gotten strange. Everything hurt too much to track properly. Of course. He disappeared toward the shelves, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Bond severance accelerates starvation. Your body's burning through everything trying to repair damage that can't be repaired. Normally. He returned with a small vial of dark liquid. Drink this. Lena eyed it suspiciously. What is it? Something that will either save your life or make the dying faster. Either way, better than bleeding out on my floor. When she hesitated, he added, "You walked into the wildlands to die anyway. What's the difference?" He had a point. Lena took the vial and drank. It tasted like dirt and fire and something bitter that made her gag. Heat spread through her chest immediately, burning where the bond pain had been ice. She gasped, doubling over. "That's normal," Oren said calmly. "Well, normal for this. Try not to vomit. If you vomit, you'll have to drink it again, and I only have so much." "What?" Lena couldn't finish. The heat was spreading, reaching into every part of her, and the bond pain was fighting back, the two forces warring inside her like fire and ice trying to occupy the same space. "It's a suppressant. Temporary." Oren crouched beside the bed, watching her with those unsettling amber eyes. "It won't heal the bond. Nothing can do that once a severance starts, but it'll quiet the death process long enough for your body to adjust." Adjust to dying? Adjust to living without it. He stood, moved back to the shelves. "You're strong, Lena Vale, stronger than you know. But strength doesn't matter if you don't have time to figure out how to use it." The pain was subsiding. Not gone. It would never be gone, Lena suspected, but dulled to something she could breathe through. She lay back on the furs, staring at the ceiling. Rough wooden beams, dried flowers hanging in bunches. Normal things. Impossible things. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. "I told you. You're interesting." "That's not a reason. It's my reason." Oren returned with a bowl of something that smelled like broth and herbs. "Eat, slowly. Your stomach's going to rebel, but you need the strength." Lena took the bowl with shaking hands. The first sip made her want to vomit, but she forced it down. The second was easier. By the third, her body remembered it was starving. Oren watched her eat with the detached interest of someone studying a puzzle. "You said you were bonded for 5 years. To who?" Lena didn't answer right away. Finally, "Does it matter?" "Everything matters. Details make the difference between survival and death out here." Kale Driven. Oren went very still. "The Alpha King." "Yes." "You were bonded to the Alpha King for 5 years, and he just severed it? Publicly?" "He chose someone else, Lady Seraphine Corva, for political alliance." Lena took another sip of broth. It was getting easier to keep down. "I was just a servant. The bond was an inconvenience." "An inconvenience?" Oren laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Do you have any idea how rare true-mate bonds are? 1 in 10,000, maybe less. And he threw it away for politics." "Wouldn't you?" "No, but I'm not a king." He pulled up a chair, sitting backward on it with his arms crossed over the back. "Tell me what happened. Everything. Start from when the bond broke." So Lena told him. The silence in her head, the pain, the celebration. Watching Kael take Seraphine's hand while the kingdom cheered. Mira's cold assessment, the choice to run rather than beg. Oren listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You made the right choice," he said finally. "Begging wouldn't have saved you." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen bond severances before. The rejected party always dies. Always. Doesn't matter if they beg, if the alpha changes their mind, if they try to force the bond back together. Once it starts breaking, it's done." He leaned forward. "Except you're not dying." "I feel like I'm dying. You feel like you should be dying. There's a difference." He stood, paced to the window. Outside, the forest was darkening toward evening. "The suppressant bought you time, but it's not why you're still breathing. You should have been dead before you made it a mile from the palace. Most omegas don't last 6 hours after a severance starts. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe. Or maybe you're not just an omega." He turned back to face her. "That thing you did with the rogues this morning. The speed. The way you moved. That wasn't omega behavior. I was scared. Anyone would have frozen or run. You attacked. You drew blood." His amber eyes were intense now, focused. "And I felt it, Lena. When I found you on that path, dying but still fighting, there was power coming off you, raw and untrained, but real." Lena set down the empty bowl. Her hands had stopped shaking. "I don't have power. I'm nothing special. Just a servant who got unlucky with a bond." Keep telling yourself that. But your body knows different. Orin crossed his arms. There are old bloodlines in this world. Ancient ones, from before the kingdoms formed. Before alphas and omegas were the only categories that mattered. Bloodlines that could sense bonds, manipulate them, even break them without dying. That's a myth. So are true mate bonds, according to most people. Yet you had one. He moved closer. I think you're a remnant, Lena, a throwback to something older, and I think that's the only reason you're still alive. Even if that were true, and it's not, what difference would it make? I'm still dying, just slower. You're not dying anymore. The suppressant stabilized you, but your body did the rest. You're adapting. He pulled the chair close again, sat down. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here. You're going to rest, eat, regain your strength, and then I'm going to teach you what you are and how to survive it. Why? Because the alternative is you stumble back into the forest and get torn apart by rogues, or worse. His expression darkened. There are things in these woods that make rogues look friendly. And if you're putting off the kind of power signature I think you are, they'll find you eventually. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't need help, didn't want to owe anyone anything. But exhaustion was pulling at her, and the bed was warm, and for the first time since the bond broke, the pain was manageable. 1 week, she heard herself say. I'll give you 1 week. If I'm still dying, I leave. Deal. Orin stood. Sleep now. We'll start training tomorrow. Training for what? Survival. What else is there? He moved away, busying himself at the shelves. Lena closed her eyes, meaning to rest for just a moment. She was asleep before her next breath. The nightmares came hard. Lena was back in the palace, scrubbing the great hall floor, but the stones were covered in blood, her blood, and no matter how hard she scrubbed, it kept seeping up through the cracks. Kael stood on the dais above her, watching with empty eyes while Seraphine laughed. You were never real, Kael said, his voice echoing. Just a mistake, an inconvenience. The blood rose higher. Lena tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. She was drowning in it, choking. She woke, gasping, sweat-soaked and shaking. Gray dawn light filtered through the window. The fire had burned down to embers. Across the room, Orin sat at the table, grinding something in a mortar. He looked up when she stirred. Bad dreams? Lena pushed herself upright. Her body ached, but differently now. Less like dying, more like she'd been beaten. How long did I sleep? 14 hours. You needed it. He set aside the mortar and brought over a cup of tea. Drink. It'll help with the shaking. The tea was bitter but warm. Lena drank it slowly, watching Orin move around the cottage with easy familiarity. In daylight, she could see him more clearly. The scars on his hands and throat weren't random. They were deliberate ritual marks, the kind shamans used in the old stories. You're not just a healer, she said. No. What are you? Complicated. He sat across from her, his own cup in hand. I was born into House Vane. Minor nobility, eastern borderlands. I was supposed to be an alpha, strong, dominant, a credit to the family name. His smile was bitter. Turned out I was something else, something the family didn't have a name for. So they gave me a choice, suppress what I was and live as they wanted, or leave. You left. I left. Spent 10 years wandering, learning from anyone who'd teach me. Healers, shamans, rogues, witches, figured out what I was on my own. He met her eyes. I can sense bonds, Lena. All of them. The strong ones, the weak ones, the broken ones. I can see them like threads connecting people. And I can manipulate them. Not create or destroy, that's beyond anyone's power, but influence them, strengthen them, weaken them, redirect them. Lena's hand tightened on the cup. You're saying you could have fixed mine? No, that's not how it works. Once an alpha severs a bond, it's done. I can't undo that choice. He paused. But I can help you survive it, because you have the same gift I do. It's dormant, untrained, but it's there. That's why you're still alive. I don't feel like I have any gifts. You wouldn't, not yet, but we're going to change that. He stood. Finish your tea, then we're going outside. For what? Training. I told you last night. I can barely stand, which is why we're starting simple. He pulled open the door. Cold air rushed in, bringing the smell of pine and morning dew. Come on, Lena Vale. Time to learn what you really are. The training was brutal. Oren led her to a clearing behind the cottage, a space worn smooth by years of use. He handed her a staff, just a length of wood, nothing special, and took one himself. Hit me, he said. Lena stared. What? Hit me. Hard as you can. You fought 3 rogues yesterday with a kitchen knife. You can hit me with a stick. When she still hesitated, he added, You want to survive out here? You need to learn how to fight. Really fight. Not just panic and get lucky. Lena gripped the staff. It felt awkward in her hands, too heavy on one end. She swung at Oren without much force, more testing than attacking. He blocked it easily. Pathetic. Again. She swung harder. He blocked again, then rapped her sharply on the shoulder with his own staff. The pain was immediate and startling. What are you doing? She demanded. Teaching. You're holding back. Stop it. I'm not. You are. You've spent 5 years making yourself small, invisible, harmless. That ends now. He settled into a fighting stance. In this forest, hesitation kills you. Weakness kills you. Being nice kills you. So stop being nice and hit me like you mean it. Something in Lena snapped. Maybe it was the pain. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was 5 years of swallowing anger finally finding a target. She swung the staff with everything she had. Oren blocked it, but she felt the impact travel up his arms. Saw him adjust his stance. She swung again and again, putting her whole body into it. He blocked most of the strikes, but one got through, catching him on the ribs. Better, he said, not even breathing hard. Again. They went for an hour. Lena swung until her arms burned and her hands blistered. Oren corrected her stance, her grip, her follow-through. He didn't go easy on her. When she made a mistake, he punished it with a sharp rap from his staff. When she left an opening, he exploited it. By the time he called a halt, Lena was covered in sweat and bruises, gasping for air. You're stronger than you think, Oren said, barely winded. But strength isn't enough. You need to be faster, smarter, more ruthless. He set down his staff. Rest for 10 minutes, then we work on sensing. Sensing what? Bonds. The threads that connect everyone. He gestured around the clearing. There are rogues in these woods, predators, other outcasts. All of them connected to something. Pack bonds, family bonds, territory bonds. If you can sense them, you can avoid them, or fight them on your terms instead of theirs. Lena sank down on a fallen log, cradling her blistered hands. And if I can't? Then you'll die. But I don't think you will. He sat beside her. You felt it yesterday, didn't you, when those rogues approached, before they spoke? You knew they were there. She had, a prickling at the back of her neck, an awareness she couldn't explain. That's your gift waking up. The suppressant quieted the bond death long enough for your real power to surface. Oren pulled out a water skin, took a long drink, then passed it to her. Most people are deaf to bonds. They feel their own, maybe, but nothing else. People like us? We hear all of them. Every connection, every thread. It's overwhelming at first. And eventually you learn to filter, to focus, to use it. He stood. Close your eyes. Lena did. The forest sounds washed over her. Birds, wind in the trees, something small rustling in the underbrush. Stop listening with your ears, Oren said quietly. Listen deeper. Feel for the connections. They're like vibrations in the air. Invisible strings pulling at everything. At first, Lena felt nothing. Then slowly, something shifted. It was like adjusting her eyes to darkness. Gradually, shapes emerged from the void. Not physical shapes, something else. There was a thread connecting her to Oren, faint but present. A bond of proximity, maybe, or shared purpose. And beyond that, others, dozens of them, scattered through the forest like a web. Some strong, some weak, some pulsing with life, others barely there. I feel them, she whispered. Good. Now tell me what you sense. North about 100 yards. Lena focused in that direction. 3 threads, clustered together, moving slowly. Animals? No, shifters, wolves. The rogue pack from yesterday, they're patrolling their territory. Oren's voice held approval. East? She turned her attention. One thread, strong and solitary. Something alone, powerful. Bear shifter. He's not hostile unless you enter his den. He paused. And south? South. Lena reached out with her new sense and immediately wished she hadn't. The threads there were wrong, twisted. They pulsed with something that made her skin crawl. I don't know, she said, but it's bad, whatever it is. That, Oren said grimly, is why we're training. There are things in this forest that don't follow normal rules, things that feed on bonds, on life itself. They're attracted to power like yours. He touched her shoulder and she opened her eyes. You need to be ready when they come. When, not if. Always when. Power calls to power. You can't hide what you are anymore. He picked up the staves. Again. This time, I want you to sense where I'm going to strike before I do it. Use the bond between us. Feel the intention. They trained until noon. By then, Lena was exhausted, but something had changed. She could feel it, a new awareness humming beneath her skin. The bond death pain was still there, but quieter now, like background noise she'd learned to ignore. Oren finally called a halt and led her back to the cottage. He prepared a simple meal, bread, dried meat, more of that bitter tea. They ate in silence. You're learning faster than I expected, he said eventually. Most people take weeks to sense even the strongest bonds. You did it in one session. Maybe I'm motivated, survival and all. Maybe. He studied her across the table. Or maybe you've been sensing bonds your whole life without knowing it. Tell me about the palace. Did you ever know things you shouldn't? Feel when someone was lying or angry or afraid? Lena thought back. Sometimes. I always knew when the head cook was about to snap at someone, or when the stable master was looking for someone to corner. That's bond sensing, primitive, untrained, but real. Oren leaned back. You've been living with this gift your whole life. You just thought everyone felt the same things you did. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because they didn't know. These bloodlines are so rare, most people think they're extinct. And the ones who still carry the gift learn to hide it because power makes you a target. His expression darkened. That's why I'm here. Why I live alone. Being able to sense and manipulate bonds makes you valuable, and valuable things get used or controlled or destroyed. Before Lena could respond, Oren's head snapped toward the window. His whole body went tense. What? She asked. Someone's coming, fast. He stood, moved to the door. Stay here. But Lena followed him outside, her new senses already reaching out. 3 threads approaching from the south, moving with purpose. Not rogues, too organized. They emerged from the tree line moments later, 3 men in worn travel clothes, armed with swords and hunting bows. They stopped when they saw Oren, hands moving to weapons but not drawing yet. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scarred face, spoke first. Oren Vane, we need to talk. Marcus. Oren's voice was carefully neutral. You're a long way from your territory. So are you, but then you don't have territory anymore, do you? Marcus's eyes flicked to Lena, and something predatory entered his expression. Picked up a stray? She's not your concern. Everything in this forest is my concern. I'm head tracker for House Draven now. Marcus took a step forward. The king is looking for a runaway servant. Young woman, Omega, probably dying from bond severance. Ring any bells? Lena's blood went cold. Oren didn't move. Lots of people come into these woods to die. I don't track them all. This one's special. Royal bond. The king wants her found. Marcus smiled. There's a reward. Bring her back alive, 500 gold. Dead, 200. Generous. The king's feeling guilty, apparently. Wants closure. Marcus's hand rested on his sword hilt now. So, seen anyone matching that description? Lena felt Oren's bond flare. A warning, a decision being made. Before he could speak, she stepped forward. I'm right here, she said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. Well, that was easier than expected. He gestured to his men. Take her. No. The word came from Oren, but Lena felt it echo through every bond in the clearing. The 3 trackers froze, their threads suddenly constrained by something Lena couldn't see but could definitely sense. Marcus's face went red. "What are you doing, Vane?" "She's under my protection. You'll have to go through me to take her." "The king?" "I don't care about the king, or House Draven, or your reward." Orin's amber eyes were hard. "Leave, now, while I'm still being polite." Marcus looked between Orin and Lena. His hand tightened on his sword, and Lena felt his thread pulse with anger and calculation. He was weighing the odds, 3 armed men against 1 healer and a dying Omega. Then his eyes flicked to Orin's hands, where faint marks glowed with amber light. Bond manipulation, actual, visible power. Marcus stepped back. "This isn't over. The king will send more." "Then I'll send them back too. Or I won't. And you can explain to K.L. Draven why his trackers keep disappearing in the wildlands." Orin's smile was cold. "Your choice." The trackers retreated into the forest. Lena watched their threads fade into the distance, her heart hammering. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "Yes, with more men, better weapons." Orin turned to her. "Your choice now, Lena. You can go with them, return to the palace, beg forgiveness. Maybe the king will be merciful." "He severed the bond. There's no mercy there." "Then you stay. You train. And when they come back, because they will, you fight." He held her gaze. "But understand what that means. You're not running anymore. You're choosing war with a kingdom." Lena thought about the palace, the kitchens, 5 years of being invisible, Kael's cold eyes as he took Seraphine's hand. She thought about the staff in her hands, the threads she could sense, the power waking up inside her. "Teach me," she said. "Everything. I want to be ready when they come." Orin smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "Then let's begin. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available." The training intensified the next morning before the sun fully broke the horizon. Orin woke her while the forest was still gray and cold, shoving a cup of bitter tea into her hands before she was even fully conscious. "Get up. We're moving locations." Lena blinked away sleep. "Why?" "Because Marcus knows where I live now. That means Kael knows. And I don't plan to be here when he sends the next group." Orin was already packing, dried herbs, vials, weapons. His movements were efficient, practiced. He'd done this before. "Pack light? Only what you can carry while running." "I thought you said we were fighting." "We are. But fighting smart means choosing the battlefield." He tossed her a leather pack. 5 minutes, then we move." They hiked north for 3 hours, deeper into territory Lena's senses told her was empty of bonds. No rogues, no predators, just ancient trees and silence. Orin finally stopped at a rocky outcropping that formed a natural shelter, hidden behind a waterfall. "Here," he said. "We train here." The days blurred together after that. Orin pushed her relentlessly, staff fighting until her hands bled, bond sensing until her head pounded, physical conditioning that left her gasping in the dirt. He was merciless, exploiting every weakness, punishing every mistake. "You're still holding back," he snapped on the 4th day after knocking her flat for the 10th time. "What are you afraid of?" "I'm not afraid." "Liar." He pulled her upright roughly. "You're terrified of your own strength, of what it means if you're actually powerful. Because if you're powerful, then everything they told you, that you're nothing, that you're just a servant, that you don't matter, was wrong. And if it was wrong, then you wasted 5 years of your life believing it." The words hit harder than any staff strike. Lena jerked away from him. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you better than you know yourself." Orin's amber eyes were hard. "You think I don't see it. Every time you tap into your real strength, you pull back. Like you're apologizing for taking up space, like you're afraid someone will notice you and punish you for existing." He stepped closer. "That ends now. Because the trackers are coming, Lena. And when they do, you won't survive by being small." "Then what do I survive by?" "Being exactly what they're afraid you are." That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She sat outside the shelter, watching the waterfall cascade over the rocks, and let herself feel the bonds scattered through the forest. They pulsed like distant heartbeats, some strong, some weak, some moving, some stationary. And far to the south, at the very edge of her range, she felt something else. A cluster of bonds moving together, organized, purposeful, heading their direction. She found Orin inside, sharpening a blade by firelight. "They're coming." He didn't look up. "I know. I felt them an hour ago." "How many?" 20, maybe more. Kale's not taking chances this time. He tested the blade's edge against his thumb. "They'll be here by dawn." "What do we do?" "We give them a choice." Orin set down the blade and met her eyes. "Run or fight. Your call." Lena thought about running, about disappearing deeper into the forest, staying one step ahead forever, living in fear, living small. "I'm tired of running," she said. "Good." Orin stood. "Then we prepare. Because 20 trained soldiers against 2 outcasts, we'll need every advantage we can get." They worked through the night. Orin showed her how to set traps. Not physical ones, but bond traps. Ways to confuse the senses, to make one person feel like many, to turn an enemy's own connections against them. "Bonds are communication," he explained, his hands glowing with that amber light as he wove invisible threads between trees. Cut the communication, and even the best soldiers become confused, isolated, vulnerable. "You're going to kill them." "Only if they don't leave when given the chance." His expression was grim. "I don't want bloodshed, Lena, but I won't let them take you. Not after how far you've come." Dawn broke cold and clear. Lena stood at the edge of the clearing, staff in hand, feeling the approaching bonds draw closer. Her heart was racing, but her hands were steady. 10 days ago, she'd been dying in a palace kitchen. Now she was about to face an army. The forest went quiet. Even the birds stopped singing. Then they came. 20 soldiers in House Draven colors, black and silver, emerged from the trees in a loose formation. They moved with military precision, weapons drawn. Marcus was at their head, and behind him, Lena's breath caught. Kyle Draven stood among his soldiers, dressed for travel rather than court, a sword at his hip. He looked exactly as she remembered, tall, powerful, commanding, but something was different. His face was drawn, exhausted. He had dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in days. Their eyes met across the clearing, and Lena felt it. The phantom echo of the bond that was gone, a ghost of what had been. It hurt, but differently now, like an old wound instead of a fresh one. Kale raised a hand, and his soldiers stopped. He took 3 steps forward, alone. "Lena." His voice carried across the distance, deep, rough. Nothing like the cold indifference she remembered from the Great Hall. "I need to speak with you." "You severed the bond." Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. "There's nothing to speak about." "There's everything to speak about. You don't understand what happened. He stopped, frustration crossing his face. "Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "No." Orin stepped up beside Lena. "You don't get to ask anything. You made your choice. She made hers. Leave." Kale's eyes flicked to Orin, and recognition dawned. "Vane. I should have known. You've been filling her head with the truth. Yes. How terrible of me." Orin's smile was sharp. "Tell me, Your Majesty, does Lady Seraphine know you're out here hunting your discarded mate? Or is this little expedition a secret?" Something dangerous flashed in Kale's eyes. "Watch your tongue, outcast." "Or what? You'll kill me? Join the line." Orin turned to Lena. "Your choice. Do we listen or do we fight?" Every instinct screamed at Lena to refuse, to tell Kyle exactly what he could do with his 5 minutes. But something in his expression stopped her. He looked desperate. And the bonds around him, his soldiers, his authority, his power, were tangled in ways that set her new senses screaming. 5 minutes, she said. "But he comes alone. Everyone else stays back." Kale nodded immediately. He turned to Marcus. "Hold position. I'll signal when I'm done." Marcus looked unhappy, but obeyed. The soldiers held their ground while Kyle crossed the clearing. He stopped 10 feet from Lena, giving her space, close enough to talk, far enough that she could run if needed. "You're alive," he said quietly. "When the healers told me you'd survive maybe 3 days, I thought—" He stopped, started again. "I thought I'd find your body in the forest. Not you standing here like this." Disappointed? Relieved. The word seemed to surprise him as much as her. Lena, the bond severance wasn't my choice. I was there. I watched you claim Seraphine in front of the entire court. You watched a lie. Kael's hands clenched at his sides. 2 weeks before that celebration, Duke Corva came to me with evidence. Letters, supposedly from you, plotting with Eastern rebels to assassinate me and seize the throne. He said you'd been using the bond to manipulate me, to weaken my authority. Lena stared. That's insane. I'm a servant. I can't even read. I know that. Now. But Corva had documents, witnesses, evidence that looked real. And he made me an offer. Sever the bond publicly, marry Seraphine, secure the Eastern Alliance, or he'd expose you as a traitor and demand your execution. Kael's voice was rough. I thought I was saving your life. I thought if I cut the bond, you'd be safe, free, away from the politics and the danger. So you threw me away to protect me. Lena's laugh was bitter. That's a convenient story. It's the truth. Then prove it. Kael looked at Oren. Can she sense bonds? Read intent? Yes, Oren said slowly. Why? Because I'm going to lower every defense I have. She can read me. See for herself if I'm lying. Kael turned back to Lena. Do it. Open the connection. See everything. Lena hesitated. Reading someone's bond was intimate, invasive. It meant seeing their deepest emotions, their hidden truths. It meant vulnerability. Don't, Oren warned. It's a trap. He's manipulating you. But Lena was already reaching out with her senses, tentative at first, then stronger. She found the severed bond, the ragged end where their connection had been torn, and beneath it, something else. A thread of intent, of emotion, still linking them despite the severance. She pushed into it. The truth hit her like a physical blow. She saw Kael in his private chambers, reading the forged letters with growing horror. Saw him confronting Duke Corva, who'd smiled and said, Your choice, Your Majesty. The Omega dies a traitor, or she disappears quietly. Either way, the bond ends. She saw Kael making the decision, hating himself for it, but believing it was the only way to keep her alive. She saw him the night after the celebration, drunk and broken, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. She saw him ordering the search parties, not to drag her back in chains, but to find her, to explain, to fix what he'd destroyed. Lena pulled back, gasping. The emotions were too strong, too raw. Guilt, regret, and underneath it all, something that felt terrifyingly like love. You were manipulated, she said. Yes. Corva set you up, made you think you had to choose. Yes. And you chose to hurt me rather than let me die. Her voice shook. That's still a choice, Kael. You still severed the bond. I know. He took a step closer. She didn't back away. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. But I came here to tell you the truth, to give you the choice I took away. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small vial, dark liquid that seemed to absorb light. This is a bond restoration draft. Illegal, dangerous, made by the kingdom's best healers. If we both drink it, the bond can be rebuilt. Not the same as before. Nothing can undo a severance, but close. Connected again. Lena stared at the vial. You're asking me to rebond with you. I'm asking you to forgive me, to give me a chance to fix this. His gray eyes held hers. I know I don't deserve it. I know I have no right to ask. But I'm asking anyway. Behind them, Oren made a disgusted sound. This is manipulation, Lena. He's offering you back the cage he broke you out of. It's not a cage, Kael said without looking away from her. It's a choice. Her choice. Not mine, not Corva's, not anyone else's. Hers. And if I say no, then I leave. I call off the search. You're free. Kael's expression was open, unguarded. I won't force this. I won't force you. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it. Lena looked at the vial, then at Kael, then at Oren, who was watching her with those intense amber eyes. Give us a minute, she said to Kael. He nodded and backed away, returning to his soldiers. Lena pulled Oren aside out of earshot. Don't do it, Oren said immediately. He's a king. You're just starting to understand your power. Going back to him means giving that up. Maybe. Or maybe it means using that power differently. Lena watched Kale talking quietly with Marcus. You told me I'm not just an Omega, that I carry an ancient bloodline. If that's true, then I'm not just his mate. I'm something else. Something equal. You think he'll see it that way? I think... Lena paused, searching for the right words. I think the bond breaking was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But it was also the best, because it forced me to find my own strength. And now, if I choose to go back, if I choose to rebuild the bond, it won't be because I need him. It'll be because I want to. That's dangerous thinking. All of this is dangerous. She met Oren's eyes. What do you think I should do? I think you should ask yourself what you really want. Not what's smart, not what's safe. What do you want? Lena closed her eyes. She thought about the palace, about Kael, about the bond that had once tied them together and the pain of losing it. But she also thought about the last 10 days, the training, the power, the person she was becoming. She opened her eyes. I want the truth, all of it, before I make any decisions. She walked back to Kael. The bond draft. How does it work? We both drink half. The connection rebuilds over a few hours. It won't be automatic. We'll have to work at it, strengthen it over time. But it will be real. He held out the vial. But before you decide, there's something else you need to know. What? Duke Corva is planning a coup. The forged letters weren't just about separating us. They were part of a larger plan to destabilize the throne. He's been building an army, making alliances. The wedding to Seraphine was supposed to buy me time to counter him, but... Kael's jaw tightened. I underestimated how fast he'd move. He's already killed 3 of my border lords. My advisors estimate I have maybe 2 weeks before he makes his move on the capital. So you need me, Lena said slowly. Not just because of the bond, because you need every advantage you can get. I won't lie to you. Not anymore. Kael's voice was steady. Yes, I need you. Your gift, your power. Bane's been training you, I can see it. Someone who can sense bonds, manipulate them. That's a weapon Corva doesn't know about. You could help me identify his spies, break his alliances, maybe even save the kingdom. And if I say no, if I stay here in the forest with Oren, then I fight Corva alone, and I'll probably lose. He smiled, but it was bleak. But you'll be free, and maybe that's worth it. Lena looked at the vial again, at the possibility it represented: bond, power, choice. I need time to think, she said. You have until sunset. That's when we leave for the capital, with or without you. Kael stepped back. Whatever you decide, Lena, thank you. For listening, for not killing me on sight. That's more than I deserve. He returned to his soldiers. They set up camp at the edge of the clearing, giving Lena and Oren space. The day stretched out, heavy with tension. Oren didn't push her toward any decision, but she could feel his disapproval radiating through their bond. He thought she was considering walking back into a trap. Maybe she was. As the sun started its descent toward the horizon, Lena made her choice. She approached Kael's camp. The soldiers tensed, hands moving to weapons, but Kael waved them off. Well? He asked. I'll come back to the capital, Lena said. But not as your mate. Not yet. Kael's expression flickered, hope and disappointment warring. Then what? As myself. As someone with power who's choosing to help you because it's the right thing to do, not because of a bond or duty or obligation. She held his gaze. I want to stop Corva. I want to save the kingdom, but I do it my way, on my terms. And if you try to control me, if you try to make me small again, I walk. Agreed. The word was immediate. Anything else? Seraphine. What happens to her? The engagement is already broken. Corva showed his hand too early, and she was smart enough to denounce him publicly. Kael's smile was grim. She's allied with me now, against her own father. That can't be easy for her. No, but she chose survival over family. Can't fault her for that. He paused. So, you'll help me. I'll help the kingdom. There's a difference. Lena turned to where Oren was watching from the shelter. And Oren comes too. He's the one who trained me. You want my power? You get him as part of the deal. Kale looked like he wanted to argue, then thought better of it. Fine, but he follows my orders in the capital. He follows his own conscience, same as me. Lena crossed her arms. Take it or leave it. You've changed. Kael's voice held something that might have been admiration. The Lena I knew would never have. The Lena you knew died when you severed the bond. I'm what's left. She met his eyes. And I'm not fragile anymore. Remember that. Kael nodded slowly. I will. Lena walked back to Oren, who was already packing his supplies. You heard? Every word. He didn't look happy. You're making a mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. She started gathering her own things. Besides, you're coming with me. Someone has to make sure I don't do anything stupid. That's a full-time job. But his smile was genuine. Fine, we'll save your idiot king and his crumbling kingdom, but when this goes wrong, and it will, I'm saying I told you so. Deal. They were ready to leave within the hour. Kael's soldiers formed up in a protective formation, with Lena and Oren in the center. It should have felt safe. Instead, it felt like being caged. They'd been traveling for maybe 20 minutes when Lena's senses screamed a warning. She grabbed Kael's arm without thinking. Stop! Everyone stop! The soldiers froze. Kael looked at her. What is it? Bonds, lots of them, surrounding us. Lena closed her eyes, focusing. At least 50, moving into position. They've been tracking us since we left the clearing. Corva's men? Marcus asked, his hand on his sword. I don't know. The bonds feel wrong. Twisted. Like the thing Oren showed me south of his cottage. Lena opened her eyes. Whatever they are, they're not human. As if summoned by her words, the forest around them began to change. The trees seemed to close in, branches reaching like grasping fingers. The light dimmed even though the sun hadn't set. And from the shadows between the trees, things began to emerge. They looked almost human. Almost. But their movements were wrong, jerky and insect-like. Their eyes reflected light like an animal's. And the bonds connecting them were black, pulsing with something that made Lena's new senses recoil in horror. Thralls, Oren said quietly. His face had gone pale. Oh no, 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 no. What are thralls? Kael demanded, his sword already drawn. People whose bonds have been corrupted, turned into weapons. They're not alive anymore, not really. They're just, Oren swallowed hard, puppets, controlled by someone with power like mine, like Lena's, but twisted, perverted. Can we fight them? You can't kill what's already dead. The thralls moved closer, forming a circle. 50 of them, maybe more, all moving in perfect synchronization. And then, from the center of their formation, someone stepped forward. He was tall, dressed in robes of deep crimson, with silver hair despite a young face. His eyes were completely black, no whites, no pupils, just endless darkness. And the bonds radiating from him were like nothing Lena had ever seen. They connected to every thrall, every tree, every living thing in the area. A web of control so vast and intricate it made her dizzy just looking at it. Lena Vale, the man said. His voice was smooth, cultured, wrong. How wonderful to finally meet you. I've been watching for so long. Who are you? Kael stepped in front of Lena protectively. The thralls hissed at the movement. My name is irrelevant. What matters is what I am. The man smiled. I am the one Duke Corva hired to ensure you never reach the capital. I am the one who will deliver your corpse to him as proof of contract fulfilled. And I am the one who will take your little bondwalker as payment for services rendered. He gestured, and the thralls surged forward. Chaos erupted. Kael's soldiers fought with desperate skill, but the thralls were relentless. They didn't feel pain, didn't tire, didn't stop. For every one cut down, 2 more took its place. Lena felt Oren grab her arm. We need to run, now. This is a trap designed specifically for you. I'm not leaving them. They're already dead. Look. Lena looked. Kael was fighting 3 thralls at once, his sword moving in arcs that should have been fatal, but only seemed to slow them. Marcus was down, blood spreading from a wound in his side. The other soldiers were falling, one by one. The man in crimson walked toward her through the chaos, unbothered by the fighting. His black eyes were fixed on Lena with hunger that made her skin crawl. "You're untrained," he said conversationally. "Raw. Powerful, yes, but you have no idea how to use it. You're like a child with a sword, swinging wildly and hoping to hit something." He raised one hand and Lena felt bonds wrap around her like chains. "Let me show you what real power looks like." The bonds tightened. Lena couldn't breathe, couldn't move. She was being crushed by invisible force, her own gift turned against her. Orin screamed something, lunged at the man in crimson, but thralls grabbed him and dragged him down. Kale roared and charged, but more thralls blocked his path. Lena was alone, being squeezed to death by her own power, and she couldn't. No. The word came from somewhere deep inside. Not a thought. A command. She was not going to die here. Not after everything. Not after finding her strength, her purpose, herself. Lena stopped fighting the bonds. Instead, she reached for them. The man in crimson's eyes widened. "What are you?" She grabbed the threads that were crushing her and pulled, not away, toward. She pulled them into herself, absorbed them, made them hers. And then she pushed back. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Every bond the man had created, every thrall he controlled, every connection he'd woven, reversed. The power flowed backward, through Lena, amplified by whatever her bloodline made her, and slammed into him with force that shook the ground. The man in crimson screamed. The thralls collapsed like puppets with cut strings. The twisted bonds shattered, and for one brilliant moment, Lena could see everything, every connection, every thread, every possibility. She could kill him. She could take his power, add it to her own, become something unstoppable. The temptation was overwhelming, but Orin's voice cut through the power haze. "Don't. That's how you become like him. That's how the corruption starts." Lena hesitated. Then, with effort that left her shaking, she released the bonds. Let them dissipate instead of claiming them. The man in crimson fell to his knees, his black eyes fading to normal brown. He looked up at her with an expression of pure terror. "What are you?" he whispered. "Someone who makes different choices than you." Lena's voice was steady despite her exhaustion. "Leave. Tell Corva his plan failed, and if you ever come near me again, I won't show mercy a second time." The man scrambled to his feet and ran, disappearing into the forest. The clearing was silent except for heavy breathing and quiet groans. Lena turned to find Kael staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Awe, maybe, or fear. "You just—" he started. "I know." She swayed and Orin was there, steadying her. "Did I just make things worse?" "Probably," Orin said. "You just showed Corva that you're more powerful than anything he's ever seen. He'll either try to kill you immediately or recruit you. Either way, we need to move." Kael was checking his wounded soldiers. 3 dead, 5 injured, including Marcus. "Can they travel?" "With help," one of the soldiers said. "Then we move now, before Corva sends something worse." Kael looked at Lena. "Can you walk?" "I can run if I have to." They gathered the wounded and started moving double time toward the capital. As they traveled through the darkening forest, Lena felt the weight of what she'd just done settling over her. She'd faced a master of bond manipulation and won. She'd saved Kael and his soldiers. She'd proven her power was real, but she'd also painted a target on her back that would never disappear. And somewhere ahead, in the capital city, Duke Corva was learning that the discarded servant he'd helped destroy was coming for him. With power he couldn't imagine, and a grudge she had no intention of forgetting. They reached the capital's outer walls just before midnight, exhausted and bloodied. The guards recognized Kael immediately and opened the gates without question, though their eyes lingered on Lena with open curiosity. She didn't blame them. She was dressed in forest leathers, covered in dirt and blood, walking beside their king like an equal rather than trailing behind like a servant. The palace loomed ahead, all torches and marble, exactly as she remembered. Lena's stomach twisted. 2 weeks ago, she'd run from this place expecting to die. Now she was walking back through the front gates. "Take the wounded to the healers," Kael ordered Marcus, who was pale but still standing. "Send someone to prepare the East Wing for our guests." "The East Wing, Your Majesty." Marcus looked confused. "That's the royal family's—" I know where it is. Kale's tone left no room for argument. Do it. Marcus bowed stiffly and limped away with the other soldiers. That left Kyle, Lena, and Oren standing in the courtyard as servants rushed around them. The East Wing? Lena asked quietly. You're not going back to the servants' quarters. Kale met her eyes. You're here as my ally, not my property. You'll be housed accordingly. That's going to cause talk. Let it. He gestured toward the palace entrance. We have bigger problems than gossip. Corva knows you're alive and powerful. He'll move fast now. They were led through corridors Lena had only ever cleaned, never walked through as anything but invisible. Nobles stared as they passed. Whispers followed in their wake. By morning, the entire palace would know that the discarded Omega had returned. The East Wing was ridiculous. Rooms the size of houses, with beds that could fit 5 people and windows overlooking the entire city. A servant showed Lena to her chambers while another took Oren to an adjoining suite. I'll send someone with food and water for bathing, the servant said, her eyes carefully averted. She was young, maybe 16. Lena recognized the fear in her posture. She'd worn it herself for years. What's your name? Lena asked. The girl looked startled. Sarah, miss. Not miss, just Lena. She offered a tired smile. Thank you, Sarah. I know this is strange. It's not my place to have opinions, Lena. Maybe not, but you have them anyway. Lena sat down on the edge of the enormous bed. I'm guessing the palace has been full of opinions since I left. Sarah hesitated, clearly weighing whether honesty was safe. Finally, some say you bewitched the king. Others say you were a traitor. Most just think you died in the forest like you were supposed to. And what do you think? I think you were braver than I'd ever be. The words came out in a rush. Running instead of begging. I watched the celebration that night, watched him claim Lady Seraphine, and I thought, if it were me, I'd want to run too. Before Lena could respond, Sarah ducked into a quick bow and fled. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Lena alone in a room that cost more than her entire life had been worth 2 weeks ago. She didn't sleep. Couldn't. Instead, she stood at the window watching the city below. Thousands of lights, thousands of lives, all depending on a system that had tried to crush her. Somewhere out there, Duke Corvo was planning his next move. And somewhere in this palace, people were deciding whether she was an asset or a threat. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Oren entered without waiting for permission, looking as exhausted as she felt. You should rest, he said. So should you. Can't. Too busy thinking about all the ways this goes wrong. He joined her at the window. You realize what you did in that forest, right? You absorbed another Bondwalker's power without being corrupted. That shouldn't be possible. But I did it. Which means you're either incredibly strong or incredibly lucky. Probably both. Oren's reflection in the glass was grim. Corvo will hear about it. He'll know you're not just some runaway Omega anymore. You're a weapon. Good. Let him know. Lena's voice was harder than she intended. I'm tired of being underestimated. Being underestimated kept you alive. Being feared? Oren shook his head. That makes you a target for everyone. Before Lena could answer, another knock. This time it was Kyle, still in his travel clothes, looking like he hadn't stopped moving since they'd arrived. We need to talk, he said. War Council. Now. They followed him through the palace to a room Lena had never seen. A circular chamber with a massive table in the center, covered in maps and markers. Several people were already there. An older man in military dress. A sharp-eyed woman in noble silks. And Lena stopped short. Seraphine Corva sat at the table, looking every bit as beautiful and composed as she had at the celebration. She met Lena's eyes without flinching. Miss Vale, she said coolly. How unexpected. Lady Corva. Lena forced herself to move forward, to take a seat across from the woman Kael had chosen over her. Or is it still Lady since the engagement's broken? It's still Lady, and it's Seraphine if we're being informal. Her blue eyes were calculating. I hear you're quite powerful. My father's very interested in meeting you. I'm sure he is. Enough. Kael took his seat at the head of the table. Introductions. Lena, Oren, this is General Thorne, my military commander. Lady Ashford, my chief advisor. And you've met Seraphine. The traitor's daughter, Oren said pleasantly. How cozy. Seraphine's smile was sharp. Former trader's daughter. I denounced him publicly 3 days ago. Cost me my inheritance, my family name, and any chance of a peaceful life. So yes, let's discuss coziness. She's proven her loyalty, General Thorne said gruffly. Gave us intelligence on Corva's troop movements, supply routes, everything. Without her, we'd be fighting blind. Lady Ashford leaned forward. The question is, can we trust your companions, Your Majesty? An outcast and a servant? Bondwalker and strategist, Kale corrected sharply. Lena destroyed a master manipulator in the forest. Orin trained her. They're assets, not servants. Assets that appeared very conveniently, Ashford said. Right when Corva makes his move. Forgive me for being suspicious. Your suspicion is noted. Kael spread his hands over the map. Here's what we know. Corva has 40,000 soldiers amassed at the eastern border. He's been recruiting mercenaries, buying off minor lords, and building alliances for over a year. The hired bondwalker we encountered was just the beginning. He has others, at least 3 more that Seraphine knows about. 4, Seraphine corrected. He acquired another one last week. A woman from the southern kingdoms, specializes in severing bonds from a distance. Lena felt her blood run cold. She can break bonds without being near the target? Yes. My father planned to use her to isolate the king, break his bonds with his generals, his advisors, anyone loyal to him, leave him alone and vulnerable. Seraphine's expression was carefully blank. He's probably targeting you now instead. Let him try. Lena met her eyes. I survived one severance. I can survive another. Can you? Seraphine tilted her head. Because from what I understand, you nearly died. Would have died, if not for... She gestured at Orin. Him. Do you really want to test those odds twice? What I want is to stop your father from killing thousands of people in a pointless war. On that we agree. Seraphine turned to Kael. The question is how? Corva has numbers, resources, and bondwalkers. We have, what, 20,000 loyal soldiers? A few nobles who haven't been bought off? And whatever she is, she nodded at Lena. No offense. None taken. Lena leaned over the map, studying the markers. Where's Corva now? Eastern Fortress, 3 days' march from here. General Thorne pointed to a position on the map. He's waiting for something. We're not sure what. The coronation, Lena said quietly. Everyone looked at her. He's waiting for you to officially marry Seraphine and solidify the Eastern Alliance. Except that's not happening anymore, which means his timeline just moved up. He'll attack soon. Within days. How do you know that? Ashford demanded. Because it's what I'd do. Lena traced a finger along the map. He spent a year setting up a perfect scenario, force the king into a marriage alliance, then betray him from the inside. But I survived, the engagement broke, and now he's exposed. He has to move fast or lose everything. Kael was nodding slowly. She's right. Corva's always been methodical. This is desperation. Desperate men are dangerous, Thorne said. So are desperate women. Lena met Kael's eyes. You brought me here to use my power against him, so let's use it. Let me find his bondwalkers before they find us. You're untrained, Orin protested. 2 weeks ago, you didn't even know you had this gift. Going up against experienced manipulators will get you killed. Then train me faster. Lena turned to him. You said I learned quickly. Prove it. We have, 3 days? 4? Teach me everything you can in that time. That's insane. That's necessary. Lena stood. Look, I didn't come back here to hide in a comfortable room while other people fight. I came back to finish this. And the only way to do that is to become what Corva fears most, someone stronger than his weapons. The room was silent. Then Seraphine laughed, a short, sharp sound. I like her, she said to Kael. She's either brilliantly brave or completely suicidal. Either way, more interesting than I expected. This isn't about interesting, Ashford snapped. This is about survival. We can't stake everything on an untested girl with a power we don't understand. You don't have to understand it, Lena said. You just have to let me use it. Kael was studying her with that intense focus she remembered from the bond. If we do this, if we commit to this strategy, we're betting everything on you. If you fail, If Corva's bondwalkers are stronger, we lose. The kingdom falls. And if we don't try what? We fight a conventional war against superior numbers and lose anyway? Lena crossed her arms. At least this way we have a chance. She's not wrong, Thorn admitted reluctantly. Our best estimates give us a 30% chance of victory in open battle. Those are bad odds. And with her? Kael asked. Unknown. But unknown is better than certain death. Kael looked around the table. Ashford looked skeptical. Thorn looked pragmatic. Seraphine looked amused. Orin looked resigned. 3 days, Kael said finally. Orin trains Lena in bond manipulation. Thorn prepares our defenses. Ashford identifies any remaining Corva sympathizers in the palace. Seraphine, you keep feeding us intelligence on your father's movements. And you? Seraphine asked. I'm going to do something I should have done weeks ago. Kael stood. I'm going to address the court, publicly. Tell them exactly what Corva did, what he's planning, and why they should stand with us instead of him. That's risky, Ashford warned. Some of them are already on his side. Then let them show themselves. Better to know who our enemies are. Kael moved toward the door. Council dismissed. We reconvene tomorrow at dawn. Everyone filed out except Lena and Kael. They stood on opposite sides of the table, the map between them showing a kingdom on the brink of war. Thank you, Kael said quietly, for coming back, for helping. Don't thank me yet. I might get us all killed. You might, but at least we'll die fighting instead of running. He paused. That night at the celebration, when I took Seraphine's hand, I saw you in the crowd, just for a second. And the look on your face. He stopped, his jaw tight. I've made a lot of hard choices as king. That was the worst one. Because you thought you were protecting me. Because I was a coward. I should have fought Corva then, exposed his manipulation, trusted that we could weather it together. Instead, I believed his lies and threw away the most real thing I'd ever had. Kael looked at her. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know. I see you now. The real you. And you're stronger than I ever imagined. Lena didn't know what to say to that. So she just nodded and left, finding her way back to her chambers through corridors that felt less foreign now. Sarah was waiting with food and heated water for bathing. Lena ate mechanically, washed the forest off her skin, and fell into bed just as dawn was breaking. She slept hard and woke to Orin shaking her shoulder. Up, we're training. The next 3 days were a blur of exhaustion and learning. Orin pushed her harder than he ever had in the forest, teaching her to sense bonds from a distance, to identify manipulation, to shield her own connections from outside influence. They worked in a private courtyard where no one could see, from dawn until long after dark. Again, Orin would say, over and over. Faster, cleaner. You're still telegraphing your intent. Lena learned to read the bonds of everyone in the palace, servants, nobles, soldiers. She could feel their connections, their loyalties, their lies. It was overwhelming at first, like trying to hear 100 conversations at once. But gradually she learned to filter, to focus, to understand the web of relationships that held the kingdom together. On the second day, she identified 3 of Corva's spies in the palace, nobles who appeared loyal but whose bonds showed connections running east. Kael had them quietly arrested. On the third day, she felt something new, a distant presence, powerful and wrong, approaching from the east. Another bondwalker, maybe the distant, severer Seraphine had mentioned. She's coming, Lena told Kael that evening. The one who breaks bonds. I can feel her. How far? Half a day, maybe less. She's moving fast. Kael immediately called the War Council. Corva's making his move. If he's sending his bondwalker ahead, the army won't be far behind. We're not ready, Thorn protested. We need another week to... We don't have another week. Kael turned to Lena. Can you stop her? This bond severer? I don't know. I've never fought someone with that specific ability. Then you'll learn. Orin stepped forward. But not alone. I'll go with her. No. Lena shook her head. If something goes wrong, the kingdom needs you. You're the only other bondwalker we have. Which is exactly why I should... He's right, Seraphine interrupted. If both of you die, we lose our only advantage. Better to risk one than both. Lena met Kael's eyes. I can do this? I know you can. He didn't look away. But that doesn't mean I'm not terrified of sending you out there alone. I won't be alone. I'll take soldiers. Soldiers won't help against a bondwalker. You know that. Kael's hands clenched. This is exactly what Corva wants. Isolate you, kill you, remove our advantage. Then I guess I better not die. Lena tried for a smile. It felt wrong on her face. When she gets close enough, I'll go out to meet her. Neutral ground. Just the two of us. That's suicide, Ashford said flatly. It's strategy. If I can beat her, it proves to Corva that we're not helpless. It might make him reconsider his attack. Or it might make him angry enough to attack immediately, Thorne countered. Either way, we fight. The question is whether we fight with or without our best weapon. Lena looked around the table. I'm going. The only question is whether you support me or not. Silence. Then Seraphine spoke. I support her. Everyone turned to look at her. She shrugged. My father's bondwalker is good, but she's arrogant. Thinks her distance ability makes her untouchable. If anyone can exploit that, it's someone unexpected. Someone she'll underestimate. The enemy of my enemy, Lena said. Something like that. Seraphine's smile was cold. Also, watching you humiliate my father's prized weapon would be deeply satisfying. Personal reasons. I'll go with her, Orin said. Not to fight, just to observe. If things go wrong, I can pull her out. Kael looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he just nodded. Then we prepare. Lena faces the bondwalker at dawn. If she wins, we have leverage. If she loses... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. That night, Lena stood at her window again, watching the city sleep. Tomorrow she'd face someone who could sever bonds from a distance, who had years of training and experience, someone who served a man who wanted her dead. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt calm, ready. A knock at her door. She opened it to find Kael standing there. No crown, no guards. Just a man who looked exhausted and worried. I can't sleep, he admitted. Neither can I. Can I come in? Lena stepped aside. Kael entered, moved to the window beside her. They stood in silence, watching the city together. When this is over, he said quietly, when Corva's defeated and the kingdom safe, will you stay? I don't know. That's fair. He turned to face her. But I need you to know something. Whether you stay or go, whether you forgive me or not, you changed me. Made me see how blind I'd been, how much I'd taken for granted. I was so focused on being a strong king that I forgot what it meant to be a decent person. You're not a bad person, Kael, just a flawed one, like everyone else. Maybe, but my flaws almost killed you, and I have to live with that. His hand moved like he wanted to touch her, then dropped. Win tomorrow, not for me, for yourself. Show them all what I was too stupid to see from the beginning. And what's that? That you were never nothing. You were always everything. I just wasn't looking. He left before Lena could respond. She stood at the window until the sky began to lighten, thinking about bonds and choices and the person she'd become in the ruins of who she'd been. Dawn came cold and gray. Lena, dressed in the leather armor Orin had found for her, strapped a knife to her belt, more for comfort than use, and met him in the courtyard. Ready? He asked. No, but I'm going anyway. They rode out with a small escort of soldiers who stayed back when they reached the meeting point, a cleared field 3 miles from the city walls. The bondwalker was already there, waiting. She was tall, elegant, with silver hair and eyes the color of ice. She stood alone, radiating confidence. You're the rogue Omega everyone's so worried about? Her voice carried across the field. You look like a child playing dress-up. And you look like someone who's about to lose, Lena called back. But appearances can be deceiving. The woman laughed. I am Celeste. I have served Duke Corva for 10 years. I have broken the bonds of kings and generals, turned the loyal into traitors, destroyed families with a thought. What have you done, little Omega? Survived. Lena walked forward until they were 20 feet apart. And learned, and chosen to stand instead of kneel. How poetic. Watch closely, girl. This is how legends die. Celeste raised her hand and Lena felt it immediately, fingers of power reaching for her bonds, searching for connections to sever. The attack was surgical, precise, devastating. Lena didn't fight it, she absorbed it. Just like she'd done with the man in crimson, she pulled the attacking power into herself, let it flow through her, and sent it back amplified. Celeste's eyes went wide. She staggered, her own attack turned against her, severing not Lena's bonds but her own. The connections tying her to Corva, to her power source, to her certainty, all of them snapped at once. She fell to her knees, gasping. Lena walked forward until she stood over her. Tell Corva that his weapons don't work on me. Tell him that if he wants this kingdom, he'll have to come take it himself. And tell him that the nothing servant he tried to erase is waiting for him. Celeste looked up with pure terror in her eyes. What are you? Someone who makes different choices. Lena turned and walked away. Now run, before I change my mind about mercy. Celeste ran. Lena made it back to her horse before her legs gave out. Orin caught her, lowered her gently to the ground. That was the most reckless, brilliant thing I've ever seen, he said, grinning. You just defeated Corva's best weapon in under 5 minutes. I thought I was going to die. You probably should have, but you didn't. He helped her to her feet. Now comes the hard part. What's harder than that? Convincing the kingdom that you're not a threat. Because after this, everyone's going to be afraid of you. They rode back to the city with the soldiers cheering. Word of Lena's victory had somehow already spread. Bondwalkers communicating, maybe, or just the natural speed of gossip. By the time they reached the palace gates, crowds had gathered. They stared at Lena with awe and fear in equal measure. Kael was waiting in the courtyard. He strode forward as Lena dismounted, and for a moment she thought he might embrace her. Instead, he went to one knee. The courtyard went silent. You saved us, he said loudly, so everyone could hear. Not as my servant, not as my subject, as my equal. And the kingdom owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Lena stared at him, at the assembled nobles and soldiers watching with shocked faces, at Seraphine standing on the steps with something like respect in her eyes. Get up, Lena said quietly. Please. Kael stood. Corva will be here within 2 days. We need to be ready. Then let's get ready. Lena turned to face the crowd. All of you. I'm not here to take anything. Not your throne, not your power, not your lives. I'm here because someone has to stand between you and a man who sees this kingdom as property to be claimed. If you want to help, help. If you don't, stay out of the way. But don't be afraid of me. I've had enough of fear. She walked past Kael, past the nobles, into the palace. Behind her, she heard the courtyard erupt in conversation. In her chambers, she finally let herself collapse. Sarah was there immediately with water and food. That was amazing, the girl whispered. You were amazing. I was lucky. No, you were strong. There's a difference. Sarah set down the tray. Half the palace is terrified of you. The other half wants to follow you into battle. I've never seen anything like it. Lena laughed, exhausted. Which half are you? The half that thinks you're going to change everything. Sarah smiled. Whether you mean to or not. After she left, Lena stood at her window one more time, watching the sun set over a city that had never wanted her. Below, soldiers prepared for war. Nobles argued in halls of power. And somewhere to the east, Duke Corva was learning that the weapon he'd tried to use against the king had just been destroyed by a discarded servant he'd never even considered a threat. The kingdom was about to change, and for the first time in her life, Lena Vale was going to be the one changing it. Corva's army arrived 36 hours later, just after midnight. Lena felt them before the watchmen spotted their torches, 40,000 bonds moving in formation, a wave of connection and intent rolling toward the capital like a tide. She stood on the palace walls beside Kael and General Thorn, watching the distant light spread across the horizon. That's a lot of soldiers, Thorn muttered. We have 22,000, Kael said, and walls, and her. He glanced at Lena. Don't put all your faith in me. I'm still figuring this out as I go. That makes 2 of us. Kael's hand rested on his sword hilt. Corva will want to talk first, offer terms. It's what I do with superior numbers. What will you tell him? The truth. That his manipulation failed, that his bondwalkers can't touch us, that if he wants this throne, he'll have to pay for it in blood. Kael's jaw tightened. And then we'll see if he's as confident without his tricks. The army stopped a mile from the walls and set up camp. Lena could feel the bond shifting, organizing, 3 remaining bond walkers positioning themselves at strategic points. They'd learned from Celeste's defeat they weren't coming close enough for Lena to reach. At dawn, a rider approached under a white flag. He delivered a sealed letter to the gate captain, who brought it immediately to Kael. The king read it aloud to his assembled commanders. Duke Corva requests parley. Noon today, neutral ground between our positions. He comes with 10 men. King Draven may bring the same. Terms to be discussed, bloodshed to be avoided if possible. It's a trap, Ashford said immediately. Of course it's a trap. Seraphine stood near the back of the room, her face unreadable. My father doesn't do anything without 3 backup plans. He'll use the parley to assess your strength, identify weaknesses, maybe even try another bond attack. Then I don't go, Kael said. You have to go, Lena spoke up. Everyone turned to look at her. If you refuse, he'll spin it as cowardice. Use it to rally any nobles still undecided. You have to meet him, show strength, prove you're not afraid. And walk into whatever trap he's prepared? Not alone, Lena stepped forward. I go with you. Me, Oren, and 8 soldiers. If Corva tries anything with his bondwalkers, we'll be ready. Oren made a sound of protest. Lena, you just fought Celeste yesterday. You need rest, not another. I need to end this, we all do. She looked around the room. Every hour we wait, more people die. Soldiers on both sides, civilians caught in the middle. If there's even a chance Corva will negotiate, we have to take it. Thorn frowned. And if he won't negotiate? If this is just a setup for assassination? Then I make sure he fails. Lena met Kael's eyes. Trust me. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with everything unspoken. Kael held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. We go at noon. Lena, Oren, 8 of Thorn's best soldiers. Full armor, weapons visible. We show strength, not fear. He turned to his general. Have the rest of our forces ready. If this goes badly, I want an immediate response. The hours before noon crawled past. Lena tried to rest but couldn't, her mind spinning through possibilities and outcomes. Oren found her in the training courtyard, working through staff forms to keep her hands busy. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Why? You could leave right now. Walk away from all of this. You don't owe Kael anything. You don't owe this kingdom anything. Lena lowered the staff. I owe myself. I spent 5 years being invisible, being nothing. If I run now, that's all I'll ever be. But if I stand, if I face Corva and whatever he's planned, she smiled, then I'm something else, something that can't be ignored or dismissed or thrown away. You're already something else. You proved that when you beat Celeste. I proved I'm powerful. That's not the same as being seen. Lena set down the staff. Besides, you're coming with me. If it's a trap, you'll help me spring it. Your confidence is either inspiring or terrifying. I can't decide which. At 11:30, they assembled at the gates. Lena wore the leather armor, reinforced now with steel plates at vital points. Kael wore full royal regalia, crown, cape, sword that had belonged to 3 kings before him. The 8 soldiers were Thorn's best, stone-faced and ready. They rode out in formation, Kael at the center, Lena on his right, Oren on his left. The neutral ground was a bare field halfway between the armies, already marked with flags. Corva's party was waiting when they arrived. Duke Corva himself was everything Lena expected. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of aristocratic features that looked carved rather than born. He wore expensive armor and carried himself like a man who'd never doubted his own superiority. Behind him stood 10 soldiers, and more concerning, 3 figures in dark robes. The Bondwalkers. The 2 parties stopped 20 feet apart. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Corva smiled. Your Majesty, how kind of you to accept my invitation. Cut the pleasantries, Corva. Why are we here? Kael's voice was level, commanding. To offer you a choice. Abdicate peacefully, name me your successor, and I'll let you live out your days in comfortable exile. Refuse, and my army will tear down those walls and take the throne by force. Corva's eyes flicked to Lena. And this must be the famous Omega who defeated poor Celeste. Remarkable. I didn't think a kitchen servant could learn bond manipulation in 2 weeks. Makes me wonder what else you're capable of. Why don't you find out? Lena said evenly. Perhaps I will, but first… Corva gestured, and one of the robed figures stepped forward, lowering their hood. Lena's breath caught. It was a woman, young, with familiar features. She looked terrified. Do you know who this is, Miss Vale? Lena did. She'd seen her in the palace, working in the kitchens. Her name is Mira's daughter, Elena. Very good. Elena here has a bond with her mother as daughters do. A strong bond, full of love and trust. Corva placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. The girl flinched. My bond walker can sever it. Right now. Leave this poor girl feeling empty and broken. Or, he looked at Kael, you can abdicate and she goes free. Your choice, Your Majesty. A throne for a life. Seems like a fair trade. Kael's hand tightened on his sword. You're threatening a civilian, an innocent girl. I'm demonstrating power. There are 1,000 Elenas in your kingdom. 1,000 mothers and daughters and fathers and sons, all connected by bonds I can break. Fight me, and I'll sever them all. Turn your people into hollow shells. Is that what you want? Lena felt rage building in her chest. This was Corva's real weapon, not military might, but cruelty. The willingness to destroy innocent lives to prove a point. Let her go, Lena said. Corva's eyes gleamed. And why would I do that? Because if you hurt her, I'll kill all 3 of your bondwalkers before you can blink. And then I'll kill you. Slowly. Bold words for someone outnumbered and outmatched. Test me. The field went silent. Lena could feel the 3 bondwalkers preparing their attacks, power gathering like storm clouds. Corva was still smiling, but there was calculation in his eyes now. He was weighing odds, trying to decide if she was bluffing. Then Kael spoke. I'll abdicate. Everyone stared at him. Lena felt her heart drop. Your Majesty, Thorn started. On one condition, Kael continued as if Thorn hadn't spoken. We settle this the old way, single combat. You and me, Corva. Winner takes the throne. No armies, no bondwalkers, no innocent casualties. Just 2 men and their skill. Corva laughed. You can't be serious. Why would I risk… Because if you refuse, everyone here will know you're a coward who hides behind hostages and hired magic. Your own soldiers will question why they're following a man too afraid to fight his own battles. Kael's voice carried across the field. Unless you'd prefer that story spreading through your ranks? The smile faded from Corva's face. You're trying to manipulate me. I'm offering you exactly what you wanted, the throne. Just prove you're worthy of it. Lena understood what Kael was doing. It was risky, maybe suicidal, but it followed the old codes. The laws that had governed the kingdom before politics and manipulation took over. Trial by combat, the ultimate proof of right. Corva was trapped. If he refused, he'd look weak. If he accepted, he'd have to face Kael, who'd won his throne by killing the previous king in single combat 3 years ago. Fine. Corva's voice was tight. Single combat, tomorrow at dawn. The field of champions before both armies. Winner rules, loser dies. He gestured, and Elena was shoved forward. She stumbled toward Kael's party, sobbing with relief. But know this, Draven. I've been training for this moment my entire life. You're a warrior king. I'm a survivor. And survivors always win. We'll see. The parties separated. Lena rode back to the palace in silence, her mind racing. Kael had just bet everything, the kingdom, his life, the lives of everyone who served him, on a single fight. As soon as they were behind closed doors, she confronted him. What were you thinking? You can't beat him alone. I can't beat his army, but I can beat him. Kael pulled off his crown, set it aside. Corva's good with a sword, but he relies on tricks, on advantages. In a fair fight, man to man, I'm better. You don't know that. I do. I've studied him for 3 years. I know how he moves, how he thinks. He's arrogant, and arrogance makes you predictable. Kael met her eyes. This is the right choice. It's a suicide choice. He'll cheat. Then you'll stop him. Kael's voice was calm. You can sense bonds, manipulation, intent. You'll know if he tries anything underhanded. And if he does, you'll counter it. I can't intervene in a single combat. That's against the laws. The laws say the fight must be fair. Making sure it stays fair isn't intervention, it's justice. He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. I trust you, Lena. More than I've ever trusted anyone. Don't let me die because of that trust. Before she could respond, he left to prepare. Lena stood in the empty room, feeling the weight of tomorrow settling over her like a physical thing. Oren found her an hour later. He's going to lose unless we help. I know. So we help, quietly. Make sure Corva can't cheat. And if Kael finds out, if he thinks we interfered, then he can be angry at us after he's alive to be angry. Oren's expression was grim. This is bigger than honor or fair fights. This is survival. Corva wins. Everyone suffers. We can't let that happen. That night, Lena didn't sleep. She spent the hours feeling the bonds throughout the palace and beyond, mapping every connection, every loyalty, every potential threat. She found Corva's remaining bond walkers still positioned around his camp, found the threads tying his soldiers to him, some strong, many weak, several barely there at all. An idea began forming. At dawn, the armies assembled. Two massive forces facing each other across the field of champions, a flat expanse of ground that had hosted single combats for 300 years. Kings had won crowns here, kings had lost them. The ground was supposedly soaked with the blood of warriors who'd bet everything on their skill. Now it would taste more. Kael stood on his side in simple armor, sword drawn. Corva stood opposite in ornate plate, looking confident. Between them, neutral witnesses from both armies watched. Thorn and Ashford for the kingdom, two of Corva's generals for the rebels. Lena stood with Oren at the edge of the circle, close enough to intervene if needed. She could feel the three bondwalkers preparing something, their power coiling like snakes ready to strike. The witness marshal raised his hand. Single combat for the throne of the Northern Reach. Fight with honor. Show no mercy. May the strongest prevail. His hand dropped. Kael and Corva circled each other. The armies watched in breathless silence. Then Corva attacked. He was fast, faster than Lena expected. His sword came in low, then high. A combination meant to confuse and open defenses. Kael blocked both strikes, countered with a thrust that Corva barely deflected. They separated, circled again. Corva was smiling. You're slower than I remember, Your Majesty. Age catching up? Kael didn't respond, just attacked again. This time his strikes were heavier, more aggressive. Corva gave ground, still smiling, clearly conserving energy. The fight continued. Minutes stretched into 10, then 15. Both men were skilled, evenly matched. Blood appeared, a cut on Kael's arm, a slash across Corva's cheek. Neither seemed phased. Then Lena felt it. The bondwalkers were moving, power building. They were preparing to attack Kael's bonds, to weaken him mid-fight. Oren, she whispered, I feel it. Can you stop them? I can try. Lena reached out with her senses, finding the threads the bondwalkers were weaving. They were trying to sever Kael's connection to his soldiers, to his purpose, to make him doubt himself. It was subtle, almost undetectable. Almost. Lena grabbed those threads and pulled hard. The bondwalkers' attack reversed, slamming back into them. She felt their shock, their pain. Two of them collapsed. The third tried to fight back, but Lena was ready. She wrapped his own power around him like chains and squeezed until he stopped struggling. In the fighting circle, Corva suddenly looked uncertain. He'd been waiting for his advantage, for Kael to weaken. It wasn't happening. What's wrong? Kael pressed forward, his strikes coming faster now. Feeling alone, Corva? No tricks left to save you? I don't need tricks. But Corva was backing up, his confidence cracking. Kael struck hard, his sword catching Corva's and sending it flying. Before Corva could recover, Kael had the point of his blade at the Duke's throat. The field went silent. Yield, Kael said. Corva's face was twisted with rage and fear. I won't. Yield or die. Choose. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Corva's shoulders sagged. I yield. Kael lowered his sword, turned to the witnesses. The combat is concluded. Duke Corva has yielded. The throne remains. Corva moved. Drew a hidden knife from his boot and lunged at Kael's unprotected back. Lena didn't think. She reached out with her power and grabbed every bond connecting Corva to his body. Muscle to bone, nerve to brain, thought to action. And froze them all. Corva stopped mid-lunge, his body locked in place, the knife inches from Kael's spine. The king turned slowly, looked at Corva's frozen form, then at Lena. "He violated the terms," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. The combat was concluded. What he attempted was murder, not honor. Murmurs swept through both armies. Corva's own soldiers looked shocked, betrayed. Their leader had yielded, then tried to kill his opponent from behind. It was the worst kind of dishonor. Kael looked at the witnesses. "Judgment?" Ashford spoke clearly. "Duke Corva violated the sacred terms of single combat. By law and tradition, his life is forfeit." Thorne nodded agreement. Even Corva's generals said nothing, their faces grim. Kael turned back to Corva, still frozen by Lena's power. "You could have had exile. You could have lived. But you chose this." He raised his sword. "Wait." Seraphine's voice cut across the field. She walked forward from the crowd, her face pale but determined. "He's my father. I should be the one." "Seraphine," Corva tried to speak, his mouth barely working against Lena's hold. "You betrayed your king. You betrayed the realm. You betrayed me." Seraphine's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I spent my whole life trying to earn your approval, your respect, and you were planning to use me as a pawn the entire time, to marry me off, betray the king, steal the throne." Tears ran down her face. "I loved you. Despite everything, I loved you. Daughter, please, I'm not your daughter anymore." Seraphine held out her hand to Kael. "May I?" Kael hesitated, then gave her his sword. Seraphine took it with both hands, raised it high, and brought it down. It was quick, merciful, more than Corva deserved. When it was done, Seraphine let the sword fall and walked away, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Lady Ashford followed, wrapping an arm around the younger woman. Lena released her hold on Corva's bonds. His body collapsed to the ground. Kael turned to face Corva's army. "Your leader is dead. His conspiracy is ended. You have a choice now. Continue this rebellion and die, or lay down your arms and return home. I promise amnesty to any soldier who chooses peace. No executions, no prisons, no revenge. Just go home." Silence. Then one by one, swords started hitting the ground. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Within 10 minutes, Corva's entire army had surrendered. It was over. The ride back to the palace was surreal. Crowds lined the streets, cheering for Kael, for the victory, for peace. Lena rode beside him, feeling numb and exhausted and strangely empty. That night, there was a feast. The great hall where Lena had once scrubbed floors was filled with nobles celebrating, soldiers drinking, musicians playing. Kael gave a speech about unity and healing. Seraphine was there, composed now, accepting condolences with grace. Lena stood at the edge of it all, watching. Sarah appeared at her elbow with wine. "You should be celebrating," the girl said. "You saved the kingdom." "Did I? Or did I just help one powerful man defeat another?" "You helped justice win over corruption. That counts for something." Sarah smiled. "The servants are all talking about you. How you went from scrubbing kitchens to standing beside the king. It's like something from a story. Stories always make it sound simpler than it is." A hand touched her shoulder. Lena turned to find Kael standing there, looking tired but relieved. "Walk with me?" he asked. They left the feast and walked through quiet corridors to the palace walls. The city spread out below them, peaceful for the first time in weeks. "I've been thinking," Kael said finally, "about what comes next, about what kind of kingdom we rebuild." "We? You're part of this now. Whether you want to be or not, you changed everything. The way power works, the way people see themselves, what's possible." He looked at her. "I want to formalize it. Make you an advisor, a position with real authority. Not because of the bond, that's still broken, and I won't push you to restore it, but because you've proven you belong in that council room making decisions. You want to give a former servant power over nobles? I want to give someone who understands real struggle power over people who've never gone hungry a day in their lives." "Yes." Kael smiled. "You'll hate it. They'll hate you. It'll be uncomfortable and messy and probably cause a dozen political incidents. But it'll be right." Lena looked at the city, thought about everything she'd survived, everything she'd learned, everything she'd become. I'll do it, she said, on one condition. Name it. You create a council of common people, workers, servants, farmers, voices that never get heard in that marble hall, and you listen to them. Actually listen. That'll cause chaos. Good. Maybe this kingdom needs chaos. Maybe it needs to be uncomfortable for a while. She met his eyes. You asked what kind of kingdom we rebuild. I'm telling you, one where people like me don't have to run into a death forest to feel like we matter. Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Deal. They shook on it, two people who'd been torn apart and put back together different, standing over a kingdom that would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, Lena became something the realm had never seen, an advisor with no title, no noble blood, nothing but skill and the king's trust. She worked with Oren to identify corruption, used her bond sensing to root out the last of Corva's sympathizers, helped restructure the kingdom's power in ways that gave voice to the voiceless. It was hard. The nobles fought her at every turn. Assassination attempts came twice, both failed, both exposed more conspiracies. Slowly, painfully, change took root. 3 months after Corva's death, Lena stood in the throne room before the assembled court. Kael had called a formal session, though he wouldn't say why. We gather today, he announced, to recognize service beyond measure. Lena Vale came to this palace as a servant. She left as a survivor. She returned as a warrior. And now, he gestured to Oren, who brought forward a small cushion bearing something that gleamed in the light. She becomes something more. It was a circlet, simple, silver, no crown but undeniably a symbol of authority. I name you Warden of the Realm, Kael said. A new position. You will speak for those who have no voice. You will hold me accountable when I fail. You will be the reminder that power exists to serve, not to rule. He held up the circlet. If you'll accept it. Lena looked at the circlet, at Kael, at the assembled nobles, some approving, many resentful, at Oren, who was trying not to smile, at Sarah in the crowd, beaming with pride. She thought about the girl who'd scrubbed these floors, who'd felt her soul tear apart in a kitchen, who'd walked into the wilderness to die. That girl was gone. But what replaced her was something stronger. I accept, Lena said. Kael placed the circlet on her head. The court applauded, some genuine, some forced. Afterward, in the quiet of her chambers, Oren found her staring at her reflection. Suits you, he said. Feels strange, like wearing someone else's face. It's your face. Just one you haven't seen before. He sat down. What you did today, accepting that position, it's going to change the kingdom, maybe for generations. Or maybe I'll fail spectacularly, and they'll use it as proof that servants should stay servants. Maybe. But at least you'll have tried. Oren smiled. The girl I found dying in the forest wouldn't have tried. She would have accepted her place and faded away. Look how far you've come. Lena touched the circlet. I didn't do it alone. No one does. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That night, Lena stood at her window one last time, looking over the city that had rejected her, then feared her, then accepted her. Below, in the streets, people went about their lives, working, loving, surviving. They didn't know that the woman watching them had once been invisible. They didn't need to know. What mattered was that she knew, that she remembered where she'd come from and what it cost to stand where she stood now. A knock at the door. Kael entered, hesitant in a way that was new for him. I wanted to ask you something, he said. Ask? The bond draft. I still have it. I know you said you needed time to decide, and then everything with Corva happened, but he trailed off. Do you want to rebuild the bond? Not for politics, not for power, just because. Lena had thought about this question every day for 3 months. The bond had been her curse and her salvation. Losing it had nearly killed her, but losing it had also freed her to become someone new. No, she said gently. I don't think I do. Kael nodded slowly. Can I ask why? Because that bond was formed when I was a servant and you were a king. When I was nothing and you were everything. And I don't want to go back to that dynamic, even in a new form. She stepped closer. But maybe we build something else, not a bond, just a choice. Every day we choose to be here, to work together, to care about each other. No magic, no fate, no invisible strings, just two people deciding to stand in the same place. That's terrifying, Kael said. That's real. Lena smiled. I've had enough of magic and destiny. I want something I build myself, even if it's harder, even if it's uncertain. Kael looked at her for a long moment, then smiled back. Then that's what we'll build. He left, and Lena returned to the window. Somewhere in the wildlands beyond the city, rogues still prowled and predators hunted. The forest that had nearly killed her was still there, dark and dangerous and full of unknown things. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She'd walked into that wilderness as prey, and walked out as something the kingdom had no name for. She'd faced bondwalkers and armies and her own crushing self-doubt. She'd survived the breaking of a sacred bond and discovered power she never knew existed. And now she stood in a palace that had never wanted her, wearing a symbol of authority that would have been unthinkable weeks ago, holding power that she'd earned through blood and survival, and refusing to stay small. The wildlands had tested her, the kingdom had feared her, and she'd proven to all of them, to Kael, to Corva, to every noble and servant and soldier who'd ever dismissed her, that she was exactly what they should have seen from the beginning. Not a servant, not a victim, not nothing. A force. Unbreakable, undeniable, unforgettable. And in this harsh frontier kingdom where only the strongest survived, Lena Vale didn't just survive, she redefined what strength meant. Below her window, the city slept. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new people who'd underestimate her. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she was exactly where she belonged. Not because someone gave her permission, because she'd fought her way there and refused to be moved. The bond was gone. The servant was gone. The girl who'd run into the forest was gone. What remained was someone the kingdom would have to rise to meet. And that, Lena thought with a smile, was exactly how it should be.